Hey, glad you're joining us today for the podcast. I need you to head over to Psalm 111 because that's where our reading will come from this week. Psalm 111 as we continue to think about being zealous for good deeds. And Jeff has selected some reading for us this year to help us think about that. So, Jeff, going to pitch to you first. Uh, I noticed that you keep coming back to the Psalms. I know it's a favorite book of yours.
It is a favorite book.
So
It's a big book, though. There's lots of material in there, too.
well, that is true. So I am curious. This brief psalm. Let's make a connection point between the psalm and this theme we're trying to think about this year.
Yeah, I think this one is our reading this week just simply because it's actual practice in doing a good work, which is the good work of just praising God. And part of what I think this psalm helps us to understand is that part of what makes for great praise of God is a very thorough and intentional contemplation of what He's done. And at the end of the day, as much as doing good things is important, the most important thing of all we do is love God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, right? And so this week we're just coming back to literally ground zero, which is the good work of contemplation of God and His greatness and His own great good deeds that can even become models for us about what to do.
It's interesting we're reading this now because in July we have transitioned to this new piece of our theme.
Yeah, that's right. Third quarter now.
Yeah, and when we set out at the beginning of, even before we got to 2022, one of the things we wanted to include as we developed this idea was that it is God who we serve, and the work that we do is work for Him.
Right.
And in a sense, I think this psalm reminds us of why it is that we do that.
Right.
Why He is worthy of our good efforts.
That's right. And in particular, it also focuses upon God's good works towards those who fear Him, who are His people, and as well as not just even a general recognition of God's great works in creation in general, but there is this narrowing down of the importance of God's good works for His people. And I think that's part of what the psalm ultimately kind of draws us to, even in verse 10 there at the end, where everyone remembers this phrase, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. But when you hear that, we're used to thinking of that in terms of Proverbs, right?
Right.
Proverbs chapter 1, the definition of wisdom, and yet here it is almost verbatim here in the Psalms. And I think part of that word fear can almost be not quite a synonym, but somewhere in the same thought world for zeal, that this fear, this grounding emotion, passion that brings us to God as we watch Him at work. And so our zealousness for good works comes again out of focus upon God and what He does, especially what God does for His people.
And so if I can extend that, if we could start with that idea and then go further in a very practical way to the actual works we do, I think it's helpful to remember that we do this for God and why we do this for God, because we don't always feel like doing it for each other.
That's right.
And so
That's true.
And I think that trips us up.
Oh, sure.
I'm not going to do it for that guy because he's undeserving, or I'm not going to do it for that person because I don't really care about them anyway, or they haven't done anything for me, or worse, they've been mean to me.
Right.
And so I think there are all these obstacles that get in the way when we view our good works for others as works for others,
right,
rather than works for God. So I think about what he says to slaves, what Paul says to slaves,
That's
about
right.
how they work for their masters.
Yeah.
He said, what you're doing, you do for the Lord.
That's right.
And I think that really changes the optics of how we do our works.
That's right. Well, motivation is key, I think, especially to being persistent in our good works. And so that's, again, part of why we're here this week is to bring it all back to God and the focus on God, which is ground zero for what we're doing.
So as you read the psalm and celebrate Him, also ponder that at the end, the works we do because of Him. He's defined them and told us what they are and called us to do them. And in doing them, we're acting in love for God, moved by what He's done for us. And there is the motive for the good things we do. Let's ponder that as we read the 111th Psalm this week.